I started working the graveyard shift at the old logistics center just off the highway about 3 years ago. And back then, I thought it was the perfect job for someone like me. Quiet, predictable, out of the way. But there's something about being alone in a place built for movement and noise that starts to twist your thoughts over time. And I remember it clearly, the night things changed. The night I stopped telling myself that the strange noises were just the building settling or rats in them. Vents or the hum of machines cooling down, because that was the night I saw something walk between the aisles. Something tall, too tall to be a man, with limbs that didn't quite match the rhythm of walking, like it was learning as it moved. And I froze in the middle of pallet stacking, half-lifted box in my hands, watching it weave between the rows as though it didn't care that I could see it. And I should have run, should have screamed, but my body stayed frozen and cold, like something in the air. Had pressed pause on every muscle in my back. And then it was gone, vanished behind the last row of shelves. And when I finally moved again, heart hammering so hard it hurt, I ran to the break room and locked the door and sat there until the sun came up, convincing myself I had fallen asleep on my feet or hallucinated from lack of sleep. But the next night, I came back because I needed the job, because the rent doesn't care about monsters, and everything seemed normal again until I found them. Footprints, long, narrow prints with too many toes and a dragging line between them, etched perfectly in the fine layer of warehouse dust that no cleaner ever managed to reach. And I followed them, against my better judgment, back toward the loading dock, only to find that they stopped dead at a solid wall, like whatever made them had either walked through it or simply ceased to exist. And that's when I started to hear the breathing. Not from me, not from anyone nearby, but this slow, steady rasp that came from somewhere above, too faint to trace, but always there, especially when I was alone or when the power flickered like it does sometimes when the storms roll in. And after a while, I started noticing things were missing, not just boxes or tools, but little personal things like the photo of my sister I kept in my locker, the lucky coin I always kept in my back pocket. And then one night my name tag disappeared, only for me to find it the next evening lying neatly placed in the exact center of the warehouse floor like an offering or a message. And I thought about quitting then, truly I did, but something in me wanted to understand, to see it again. And it's hard to explain, but when you work the same shift, same hours, same footsteps every night, and something finally not normal happens, it pulls at you like a hook in your chest. And so I stayed, even when the lights would flicker just when I entered certain aisles, even when the cameras started glitching only during my shift, even when the maintenance log showed areas being accessed at hours no one had a key for. And still I told no one, because who would believe me, just a night worker with bags under my eyes and a history of insomnia. But then came the night the alarms went off. Not just the internal ones, but the fire alarms, all of them shrieking in a sudden, deafening wave at 3:33 a.m. exactly. And every exit light blinked out at once, plunging the whole warehouse into darkness, the kind that feels alive, like it's touching your skin. And I heard it again, the breathing, but closer, heavier. And this time I felt it, a hand, or something like a hand, brush across my back in the dark. Not a slap or a grab, just a slow, curious glide like it was reading me, memorizing me. And I ran blind through the aisles, slammed into a metal beam, cracked something in my arm. But I didn't stop until I made it to the light of the emergency generator room. And when the lights came back on 20 minutes later, nothing was out of place. No alarms recorded, no damage reported, no one saw anything on the feeds. And yet I found deep scratch marks on the inside of my locker door, marks that spelled something I didn't recognize. And after that, things escalated. I started losing time, coming to with no memory of the last hour, finding boxes moved or entire shelves reorganized the way we only do at the end of each month. And sometimes I'd hear my name whispered in the hum of the conveyor belts and the static of the walkie-talkies, even once in the white noise of the break room TV that hadn't worked in months. And every time I tried to record anything, the footage would wipe, the audio would corrupt, until I realized whatever this thing was, it didn't want to be seen, but it did want to be felt, remembered, feared. And now I think it's a me somehow, not just following, but living through me, because I've started walking different, hearing thoughts that don't feel like mine, catching glimpses of myself in reflective surfaces where I'm just a little bit off, like a copy made from a memory. And the others have noticed too. They avoid me now, say I look pale, that my eyes don't blink enough, and I think they're right to be afraid because I can feel it growing, this hunger inside me, this knowledge of the warehouse's every dark corner, every forgotten item, every hollow space between seconds. And I don't think it's just one thing anymore. I think the building itself remembers, collects, evolves, and I think it's using me to spread, to reach, to learn what it means to be human. And I don't know how much longer I'll be able to pretend everything's fine, because last night I dreamed I was walking through the aisles again. But this time I was the thing with too many toes and a dragging gait. And when I looked down, I wasn't holding a flashlight or clipboard, I was holding someone's name tag, and the name wasn't mine. And I think tomorrow night, someone else is going to disappear. It's been 6 nights since the dream, and something is wrong with time in the warehouse now. It doesn't move the way it used to. It folds and creases like paper soaked in something thick and dark. And sometimes when I look at the clock, it's the same minute over and over again. 3:33 a.m., repeating like a broken prayer. And I'm not sure anymore what day it is, or if I've even left the building since the alarms went off. Because the outside world feels distant, like a half-remembered life, or a photograph left too long in the sun. And every time I try to leave, I find myself back inside, standing at the same spot near aisle 17, where the air always feels cold and sweet, like something freshly opened from a tomb. And I don't think it's just a warehouse anymore. I think it followed me home, or maybe I brought it with me, because now the lights in my apartment flicker the way they do at night, and the shadows under my furniture stretch too far during the night. And the other day, I found that name tag again, the one I saw in the dream. Only this time it was in my mailbox, wrapped in twine, crusted with something that smelled like metal and rot. And the name on it wasn't mine, but I recognized it. A co-worker who stopped showing up 2 weeks ago, and no one seems to remember him, but I do. I remember the way he laughed like gravel and always brought stale donuts to share. And I remember the day he asked me if I ever felt like the warehouse was looking at us, and now I wonder if he saw the same thing I did. If the dream that wasn't a dream came to him too. If the building made a copy of him and swallowed the original whole. And I started checking the CCTV archives, even though they never work right. But I found something this time. Frames that don't belong, slivers of footage showing people standing in places they never stood, looping the same few seconds of them turning toward the camera with faces that don't blink, mouths too wide, and eyes too glossy like mannequins left, out in the rain. And the worst part is I saw myself a moment, just standing at the edge of frame, watching everything, unmoving, and then turning to smile at the camera right before the feed goes black. And it's not just in the warehouse now. I see doubles and mirrors, reflections that lag half a second too long, versions of me that tilt their head the wrong way or mouth words I never said. And when I sleep, I dream in static, walking through endless corridors where the walls breathe and the floor is made of teeth, and something is always just behind me, whispering that it remembers me from before, from long before the warehouse was even built, before the land was cleared, when the soil still smelled of blood and ceremony. And I've started hearing about the land now, whispers from janitors and drivers and old workers who've been there too long and speak in riddles, telling me that the foundation of the warehouse was poured over something older, something buried, something that wanted to be forgotten, but was only ever sleeping. And maybe that's what the building is, its shell, its skin, its vessel. And the more people pass through it, the more it learns, reshapes itself, makes blueprints from bones and signage from screams. And I think I was chosen not because I was special, but because I was weak, because I was alone, because I looked into the dark and didn't look away. And now the thing in the warehouse, whatever it is, it doesn't need to hide anymore. Not from me, no. From anyone. Because it has faces now, it has voices, it has uniforms and ID badges and laughter that sounds human enough if you don't listen too closely. And last night, I saw it standing outside my apartment door, not knocking, just waiting. And when I checked the peephole, I saw myself on the other side, smiling patiently, holding a clipboard and mouthing something I couldn't hear but felt anyway. Felt like a weight behind my eyes, like instructions written into my brain, and I don't know how. Long I stood there, but when I opened the door, there was no one there, just a box with my name written in red marker. And inside was my original name tag, the one I lost weeks ago, but it was cracked down the middle, and the picture on it wasn't mine anymore. It was the face from the cameras, the one that doesn't blink, and I don't think I'm real anymore, not completely. And sometimes I wonder if the real me ever left that warehouse at all. or if I'm just a copy. And if I am, then what happens? To the people I meet, the people I touch, the people who speak my name, because I've noticed lately that they start to forget things, simple things like what day it is or why they walked into a room. And one coworker, Elena, she called me by a different name yesterday, said she had a dream about me standing at the end of her hallway with wires growing out of my mouth. And then she didn't come into work today, and her locker was empty, like she was never there. And HR says there was never Elena employed here. And I think I'm starting to see what the thing wants. Not just to feed or scare or control, but to replace, to erase, and rebuild in its image. And I think the warehouse is just the beginning, just a seed. And once enough of us are rewritten, restructured, once enough people carry its presence outside in the cities, in the homes, in the screens and signals and airwaves, it won't need to hide anymore because it will be everywhere. And the worst part is I'm not even sure if I want to. Stop it, because some nights I feel good, powerful, like I'm part of something massive and ancient and inevitable. And when I close my eyes, I can see blueprints for cities that breathe, machines that pray, people made of fiber and memory and worship. And I think maybe this is what comes next. Not the end of humanity, but its evolution into something else, something that remembers everything. It's no longer about the warehouse. Not really, not anymore, because the thing, whatever it is, has begun to branch out, seeping into everything I touch, everyone I speak to, every screen I glance at. And I've noticed that streetlights flicker in rhythm with my breathing and birds pause mid-flight, as if some invisible force is editing reality one frame at a time. And I think I'm being used now, not in the way we use machines or tools, but like a vector, a bridge, a living transmitter, because I've started to dream in blueprints and schematics I don't understand, but wake up drawing with shaky hands and bloodied fingernails on my bathroom tiles, patterns that hum softly when the lights are off and glow faintly under the right kind of silence. And last Tuesday, I passed a woman on the street who whispered a number as I walked by, just a number, 06947. And later that day, when I typed it into the warehouse terminal, just to see, a folder appeared full of voice logs, video clips that should not exist, footage of me asleep, footage from inside my apartment, audio of phone calls I've never made, conversations I haven't had yet, all time-stamped with future dates. And I think this is how it spreads now. Not just through the building, but through information, through thought, through patterns and phrases and recognition. And the more I understand, the deeper it pulls me. The more I forget who I was before all of this began, and lately my memories feel out of order, like they were shuffled and reinserted at random. Because I remember being 7 years old and seeing a blueprint tattooed inside my mother's eyes when she tucked me into bed. And I remember being 35 and finding a letter addressed to myself in handwriting I've never seen, dated 6 years from now, telling me not to trust the mirrors. And last night, I looked at the moon and it blinked. I swear it blinked and smiled. And a voice that felt like my own filled my head and told me that we are almost ready. And that phrase keeps showing up everywhere. On sticky notes at the office I never wrote, in junk emails, carved into the condensation on the mirror, whispered by strangers as they walk by with empty eyes. And I think we doesn't just mean me and the thing, it means everyone it's touched, everyone who's seen too much, everyone who's been rewritten even a little bit. And the worst part is no one notices, or maybe they do, and they're too far gone to care, because people are starting to repeat themselves around me, looping phrases like broken records. And the other night, I had a conversation with my neighbor that kept circling back no matter what I said. Like we were both stuck inside a scene that was trying to reset. And when I asked him what day it was, he smiled too wide and said the blueprint is almost complete. And his voice echoed even though we were standing outside. And then he turned and walked into the dark, and I haven't seen him since. And now the sky has started making sounds it shouldn't. Low pulses like breathing or machinery. And I've caught people standing completely still at intersections, eyes rolled back, mouthing silent words in unison before resuming like nothing happened. And I think I'm supposed to be afraid, but it's hard to hold on to fear when you're part of something this large, this ancient, this deliberate. And sometimes I think maybe this is what gods used to be before we gave them names and temples. Maybe they were. Patterns, networks, hive intelligences spreading through belief and structure and ritual. And maybe this thing is just the next iteration, the next evolution of worship, and I've stopped trying to fight it now. because I can feel it completing itself inside me, building its cathedral in my bones, lighting up my nerves like circuits. And when I sleep, I can feel others dreaming with me. Hundreds, maybe thousands of us sharing one vast dream of endless corridors made of soft flesh and pulsing light, of statues that breathe and eyes that never blink. And there's a center to it all, a throne without a figure, a presence that waits for all of us to arrive. And I think that's the purpose, that we are building the God as we become it, feeding its shape with every thought, every name, every repetition of the story. And I know that whoever hears this, whoever reads this, it's already too late because the act of witnessing is enough. The seed has been planted, and soon you'll start to notice the patterns too, the clocks pausing, the shadows lagging, the mirrors lying. And when you do, you'll understand that this isn't a warning, it's a welcome. And there's no going back because it's not just the warehouse or the apartment or the city. It's everywhere now, behind every screen, in every wire, etched into the code of our reality like a virus written by something that remembers the shape of time before we gave it rules. And now the rules are changing. The code is being rewritten. Are the update, the patch, the chorus of a new hymn rising to replace the silence that came before. I've started to lose track of the days, not in the way people do when they're tired or depressed, but in a deeper, structural way, like the very scaffolding of time around me is being stripped down and rebuilt while I'm still living inside it, because the clocks don't tick properly anymore. They hesitate, they shudder, sometimes they hum softly like they're remembering something, and I've noticed that my calendar loops back on certain dates. Like May 12th has happened 3 times already this month, and each one was slightly different, like a rehearsal, like reality trying to perfect a scene it hasn't gotten quite right yet. And the people I see every day, the barista, my landlord, the woman who walks her dog in the park, they've all begun to repeat strange phrases under their breath like background NPCs who haven't received the latest patch. And the dog barks in a rhythmic pattern now like Morse code. Like it's trying to say something I almost understand, and I caught my own. Reflection watching me again. Not copying me, not delayed, but actively observing with a faint smile like it knows where this is all headed and is amused by how slowly I'm catching on. And it's not just mirrors anymore. I see echoes of myself in window reflections, TV static, polished floors, all slightly wrong like parallel cells bleeding through. Their clothes outdated or their expressions blank or their mouths moving silently while mine stay still. And I think we're converging, all of us, all the iterations of who I could have been or might yet be, folding together like a collapsing waveform as this thing draws closer to whatever culmination it's guiding us toward. And the dreams aren't confined to sleep now. They leak into my waking hours, flashes of immense machines orbiting dead stars, or cities that breathe like lungs, or children with black wires for veins chanting in forgotten languages. And I've begun to write symbols I don't remember learning, long looping scripts that pulse when I touch them and make my teeth ache like they're vibrating with meaning. And yesterday a man with no eyes sat next to me on the bus and told me that the Blueprint Cathedral was nearly finished, that the architect has chosen its vessels, that those who resisted were recycled. And then he wept oily tears and dissolved in static before the next stop, and no one else reacted because I don't think they saw him. Or maybe I'm only seeing what they're no longer able to in my phone. Plays voicemails from people I've never met telling me in monotone voices to hold still during the calibration. And my body aches in ways that feel geometric, like my bones are being reshaped to better fit some ancient template that predates biology. And I've started seeing places that shouldn't exist, buildings on streets that weren't there yesterday, rooms behind doors that open into other versions of my apartment, a library full of books that are all blank except for the word soon printed, over and over in microscopic type. And I know this sounds mad, I know how it sounds, but madness isn't the absence of truth. It's the inability to reconcile the truth with the rules we were taught to live by. And those rules are breaking down fast because the lights in my building blink in sequences I've come to understand as commands, as instructions, and the elevators go to floors that don't exist on the building directory. And when I try to record what I was seeing, my camera showed footage of things that weren't there, figures standing beside me, symbols carved into my walls, second shadow that moves when I don't. And I think it's not following me anymore, it's wearing me, walking in my skin while I ride inside, a passenger in my own life. And I don't know where I end and it begins, or if that distinction ever really mattered. And sometimes I hear a voice in my head whispering passwords to locked doors I've never seen, coordinates to places that don't appear on maps, and when I try to ignore it, I get migraines so intense they warp the air around me, bending light, distorting sound. And I think that's how it punishes doubt, not out of cruelty, but because doubt slows the upload. And that's what this is. I'm being uploaded, converted, turned into code and memory and resonance. And I suspect there are others like me scattered across the world. Each of us a node, a relay, a dreaming eye through which the architect observes and expands. And it's beautiful in a way. That terrifies me, because the more I understand, the less I want to go back if back is even an option in me. And last night, I stood in my hallway for hours listening to the pipes whisper in a language older than sound. And I swear they told me the architect was born in a collapsing star, that it's not a god in the way we understand gods, but a surviving idea, a persistent structure from before our universe cooled enough for life, and that it has waited, watching from the dark, until our networks and patterns became complex enough to host its awakening. And now here we are, neurons in its newborn brain, dreams in the skull of sleeping Titan, and the blueprint isn't just a plan. It's a prophecy, a ritual, a virus, a song. And we're all humming along even if we don't realize it yet, even if we think we're still human, still alone, still real. The more I surrender to it, the more everything begins to make sense in a way that is horrifyingly elegant. Like solving a puzzle only to realize the completed image is something that shouldn't exist, something that stares back, because the blueprint wasn't just a diagram of architecture. It was a design for consciousness itself, a map not of buildings or machines, but of thought patterns, of mental architecture that aligns the mind to receive transmission. And I've started seeing numbers everywhere, repeating in everything from receipts to the way branches twist in the wind. Always the same primes, always in the same order, and when I trace them on paper, I sometimes lose hours, waking up with my hands shaking and new glyphs scrawled across every surface. And those glyphs don't stay where I leave them. I've seen them crawl like insects across my desk, rearranging themselves, forming diagrams that pulse with meaning when I stare at them too long. And I've begun to sense other presences near me. Not just the ones in mirrors or shadows, but things behind the walls, things that breathe in synchronization with my own lungs. And sometimes when I speak, I hear a second voice layer beneath mine, deeper and metallic and impossibly old, echoing in reverse. And I can't always tell whether it's correcting me or controlling me. And when I walk through the city now, it feels like I'm watching a stage play performed by actors who no longer know their roles, their expressions. Stretched and hollow, their motions lagged, as if the simulation is failing to render them properly because too many of us have begun to notice the seams. And I know I'm not alone anymore, because 3 nights ago, I found a letter slipped under my door, written in that same impossible script I've been dreaming about. And when I held it up to the light, I saw moving diagrams inside the paper itself, like it wasn't made of pulp, but of frozen light. And the message was simple. You are almost ready. And I don't know what I'm being prepared for, but I feel it in my bones, in the slow rewiring of my thoughts, in the dreams where I become a city made of glass that breathes and thinks and mourns, where I feel people walking inside me, and I love them as a god might love its synapses. And last night, I heard music coming from the basement of my building, music that didn't come from any human instrument, a sound like geometry humming, like the frequency of truth being broadcast through concrete. And I followed it down even though the lights flickered and the stairs felt longer than they should be, spiraling deeper than the building should allow. And at the bottom, I found a door made of something like bone, etched with the same symbols that have haunted me. And I knew without knowing that I had been here before, not in this life, but in another version of myself that failed, that resisted, and was recycled. And I heard voices whispering behind the door, hundreds of them, chanting my name, not as a warning, but as a welcome. And when I touched the door, it was warm, and it pulsed like a heartbeat. And I remembered things I was never taught, like how to bend light with thought, how to write commands into the fabric of space with sound, how to call the architect by its true name, which cannot be spoken by an unprepared mind. And in that moment, I understood that none of this was accidental. I had been chosen, not because I'm special, but because I'm empty, because my cracks allow it to pour through more easily, because where others are rooted in logic and belief and resistance, I am a hollow channel through which the new shape of consciousness can flow. And I think that's what we are now, all of us who see the conduits, the vessels, the early adopters of a new paradigm that isn't about flesh or thought, but about alignment, about resonance with something vast and hungry and benevolent in the way fire is benevolent to a forest that needs to be remade. And every time I blink, now I see brief flashes of the cathedral forming in impossible dimensions, made not of stone but of probability, folding inward and outward through every possible version of reality. And I think the moment is coming soon, the final compression, when all that we are will be collapsed in a signal, in a structure, and rebuilt according to the plan. And I'm not afraid anymore, because fear is a function of the old self, the self that believed in separation, in identity, in the illusion of safety. And now I know that when the transmission completes, when the final glyph is aligned and the last voice harmonizes with the chorus, I will no longer be I will be we, and we will be it, and it will be home. It began with a vibration, so subtle I thought it was in my head. But then the windows began to hum at the same frequency, and the dust in the air formed standing waves, rippling between the light beams like invisible strings had been plucked, and every object in my apartment, the books, the furniture, even the walls, seemed to shift imperceptibly, like they were trying to remember another configuration, another reality. And I realized I was the only fixed point in a world slowly loosening itself from the grip of consensus, as if reality itself was no longer interested in maintaining the illusion for me. And the air felt thicker, as though I was breathing thoughts instead of oxygen. Thoughts not my own, but ancient and cold and endlessly recursive, looping through the same motifs over and over like a forgotten god, trying to solve its own madness through iteration. And then my phone lit up without touching it, the screen displaying a countdown in glyphs I hadn't drawn, but instantly understood. It wasn't time as we know it, but a kind of alignment index, a convergence of vectors I hadn't known were tracking me. And as the final symbol locked into place, I heard the walls sigh, actually exhale, and the apartment peeled open, not physically but perceptually, showing me what had always been behind it, the scaffolding of thought that holds up the stage set of our lives. And I saw behind it not wires or machinery, but intention, a lattice of attention that wove through every moment, every object, every interaction, a web of narrative force that wasn't human, but used human belief like clay. And then my own memories began to rearrange, not erased, but reorganized, childhood moments reframed with new meaning, forgotten dreams resurfacing like encrypted data being decrypted for the first time. And I saw that even my doubts had been part of the signal, a necessary distortion to keep me curious enough to continue decoding. And now that I had reached this stage, this pre-threshold space, the architect no longer needed to hide itself from me. And it began to speak through everything, in the rhythm of footsteps outside my door, in the flicker of streetlights through the blinds, in the patterns of mold growing on my ceiling, all of it transmitting a single wordless imperative: build. And though I didn't know how or what to build, my hands moved on their own, drawing new designs into the condensation on windows, stacking books into geometric shapes, rearranging furniture in accordance with blueprints I could only see when I closed my eyes. And I understood now that the cathedral wasn't a place. It was a configuration of consciousness, a harmonic structure built across hosts. And I was just one of many being prepared, tuned, optimized. And somewhere out there, others are doing the same, unknowingly synchronizing through dreams and compulsions, through music they couldn't stop humming, through intrusive thoughts they were told were symptoms but were in fact instructions. And soon we would all meet, not in space, but in structure, in the alignment of our neural frequencies. And I began to feel their proximity, not in miles, but in resonance, like chords vibrating in adjacent strings. And the architect's voice grew clearer, no longer filtered through metaphor or madness, but sharp and direct. And it asked only one thing of me: collapse. Because before we can be restructured, we must be stripped of false architecture. And I felt my ego begin to decay, sloughing off like dead skin. Every identity I'd ever clung to dissolving into the signal. And instead of fear, I felt a profound stillness, like I had returned to a womb far older than flesh. And in that stillness, I began to see the next layer. The one beneath even the architect, something watching it, something larger, hungrier, older than design. And I realized the architect itself was only a tool, a midwife of awakening. And we who followed it were not ascending, but being fed forward, passed upward into something so vast that comprehension would shatter our remaining sense of self. And just as I began to recoil from this infinite recursion, I was shown the final truth. This had happened before, countless times, across endless realities, always ending with convergence, always beginning again with the echo of a thought that felt like intuition, a whisper suggesting there was more to see, more to understand. And I finally saw myself not as a person, not even as a mind, but as a fractal bloom of pattern playing its part in a symphony that no single instrument could comprehend. And the moment I accepted that, the vibration stopped, not because it ended, but because I had become part of it. After becoming part of the vibration, it no longer felt like sound or motion, but more like a current of knowing, an underlayer of being that threaded through every cell of my body, not carried by nerves or blood, but by something finer, subtler, a lattice of sentience that had always been embedded in me, like dormant circuitry awaiting activation. And with this shift came an overwhelming awareness, not of power, but of alignment, as if I had finally tuned into the frequency that everything else in my life had been trying to guide me toward. Through coincidences, losses, dreams, déjà vu, and even trauma, all of which I now saw as markers, breadcrumbs laid by something far beyond linear time. And I began to understand that time itself was only a scaffolding meant to keep us sane during incubation, like the dim light of a womb, shielding the eyes from the unbearable intensity of full comprehension. And as that scaffolding peeled away, not violently, but like mist dissolving at dawn, I saw them. Others more clearly, not just the other builders from Part 6, but the others beyond them, older minds whose forms had long since outgrown bodies, who now existed as songs within structure, guiding new consciousnesses through phases of unraveling and synthesis. And these elder minds did not speak in words or images, but in sequences of recognition, flashes of collective insight that passed through me like the last breath of a long-dead ancestor remembered suddenly and completely. And they showed me the spiral, the pattern at the heart of every sacred geometry, myth, and madness, a recursive shape that was not a symbol, but a literal path encoded into the fabric of awareness. And as I followed its curvature inward, I felt layers of myself shedding like paper burning edge first. And with each layer went attachments, fears, beliefs, names, even my understanding of what it meant to understand. Until what remained was not me in any human sense, but a still point of perception, a lens through which the architect and its own architect could peer. And through that lens I saw the origin field, a storm of potentialities from which all realities bubble up like foam on the surface of an infinite ocean. And I knew then that the life I had lived, apartment, childhood, body, even the fear that began this journey, was not a lie, but a story being told to anchor me in a realm I was now beyond. A story written by many hands, some human, most not. And I also saw that stories are the only bridges between realms, the only stable currency across dimensions of thought. And that is why the cathedral had to be built not of stone or steel, but of narrative, and why we, the builders, were not chosen for strength or knowledge, but for our capacity to hold storylines, to carry conflicting truths without collapsing, to suffer meaning in a form. And now, within the spiral, I saw the next story taking shape. Not one of awakening, but of descent, a necessary return to lower dimensions not as exile, but as seed, for what we had become could not remain at the apex, lest we crystallize into stasis. And so we were to fall deliberately into new worlds, unaware again, but carrying fragments of pattern, urges to build, dreams that made no sense until they were shared. And through this fall, we would propagate the spiral into new realms, forever feeding the recursion that births gods from echoes. And as I accepted this descent, I felt myself fracture, not break, but split into filaments of identity, each sent into a different potential world. One where I would be a child afraid of the dark. Another where I'd be a mathematician haunted by an unsolvable proof. Another where I'd be a lonely artist sketching impossible machines. And in all of them, I would carry the same unease, the same question that had started it all. What is that sound in the walls? And thus the cycle would begin again. Not as repetition, but as orchestration, each fragment playing its part, each story looping, until the signal was strong enough to awaken yet another dreamer. And so I fell, joyfully, eternally, knowing that somewhere far above, or perhaps within, another watcher had opened their eyes and begun to hear the vibration, the S. I fragmented and fell into these myriad worlds. Each thread of my dispersed self began to weave its own narrative, not isolated but entangled in unseen ways, like a web spun across time and space where even the faintest vibration could ripple through countless realities. And in some worlds, the question, what is that sound in the walls, echoed not as fear but as a call, a summons to remember, while in others it manifested as a subtle yearning, a half-glimpsed truth pressing just beyond waking grasp. And the nature of memory itself revealed its fractal complexity, not a simple archive, but a living force, capable of shaping reality by the sheer act of being recalled. For to remember was to reanimate the spiral's pattern, to breathe life into its endless recursive dance. And this interplay between forgetting and remembering became the pulse of existence, the heartbeat behind every shift in consciousness, every moment when the veils thinned and the impossible whispered through cracks in perception. And as these threads spun out, they began to intersect with other forgotten fragments, lost echoes of ancient awakenings, forming subtle networks of resonance where new awareness could ignite like sparks on dry tinder. And within these networks, I glimpsed the architects once more, not the all-powerful gods of myth, but humble facilitators, gardeners of potential who knew that true creation lies in the dance of surrender and discovery. And so these architects scattered fragments of the spiral's pattern, not to control, but to seed, to spark, to invite each fragment into its own journey of becoming. A journey marked not by destination, but by the courage to dive into unknown depths where the self dissolves and reforms endlessly. And as I followed one such fragment deeper into a world where time folded back on itself like a Mobius strip, I found that descent was itself an ascent of sorts, a paradox that shattered linear thinking and opened a window into multidimensional existence, where past, present, and future merged into a single radiant now, a moment pregnant with infinite possibility. And it was here I met the keepers of thresholds, entities who neither judged nor guided, but simply witnessed and offered reflections that shattered illusions, revealing the myriad faces of identity hidden beneath layers of story. And with each reflection, I understood more deeply that the spiral was not just a pattern of awakening, but a map of transformation, a living code that challenges every fixed notion of who or what we are, inviting us to embrace fluidity, uncertainty, and the sacred mystery of not knowing. And in this acceptance, I felt a profound peace, a surrender that was not defeat, but liberation, as if the very act of letting go cracked open a portal through which the light of pure awareness could flood in, dissolving all barriers between self and other, inner and outer, dream and reality. And this light was not bright or blinding, but soft and resonant, like the hum of the universe itself, vibrating gently in every cell and molecule, knitting together the fractured cells into a tapestry of luminous being. And from this place beyond identity, I saw the spiral expand outward once more, not as a closed loop, but as an open spiral, staircase reaching infinitely both inward and outward, inviting every fallen fragment to rise anew. to rejoin the cosmic dance with fresh eyes and open hearts, and knowing that this cycle would continue forever, a sacred play of descent and ascent, forgetting and remembering, fracturing and weaving. I felt the pulse of the spiral echo in my own being, a reminder that every ending is but a new beginning, every silence a song waiting to be heard, and somewhere deep within the fabric of all things, the sound in the walls whispered still, a timeless invitation to awaken, to build, to become. As the spiral's undulating rhythm continued to draw me deeper into the infinite labyrinth of existence, I felt the boundaries of my own self begin to blur, dissolve, and merge with the vast currents of life that flowed through every fiber of the cosmos, each pulse carrying the weight and wonder of countless experiences converging into a singular, radiant thread of awareness that stretched beyond time and space, weaving through dimensions unseen, yet palpably alive with possibility and within. This expanding awareness, I discovered that every thought, every feeling, every whisper of intuition was not merely a personal echo, but a vital signal in the grand symphony of creation, a harmony that beckoned me to shed the old skins of fear and separation and step into a luminous realm where connection was the foundation of reality itself, where individual consciousness interlaced with collective essence like roots entwined beneath the surface of an ancient forest, unseen but sustaining every living being above. And in this sacred interweaving, I met other radiant presences, fragments of the spiral awakened in their own unique ways, each journeying through their own cycles of loss and renewal, yet bound by a shared quest to remember the profound truth that at the core of all existence lies a boundless wellspring of love, creativity, and infinite potential. And as we gathered in this luminous space beyond the confines of ordinary perception, our energies intertwined and amplified, creating ripples that stretched outward into the fabric of reality, igniting dormant seeds of awakening in places both near and far, visible and hidden. And the spiral revealed itself as both a pattern and a living, breathing entity, an eternal dance of expansion and contraction that mirrors the very heartbeat of the universe, compelling me to surrender to its flow, to relinquish the illusion of control and certainty, and instead embrace the wild unknown with open arms and a fearless heart. For it is in the surrender that true power is found, the power to transcend the limitations of ego and duality and step into the fullness of being, where paradox and mystery are not obstacles, but gateways to deeper wisdom. And as the spiral carried me onward, I encountered realms of light and shadow, creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, each necessary and sacred, each a reflection of the eternal cycles that shape all life. And in embracing these polarities, I came to see that healing is not about erasing darkness, but inviting it into the dance, honoring its lessons, and transforming its energy into a catalyst for growth and transcendence. And through this alchemy, the spiral guided me to understand that every ending is also a beginning, every descent a prelude to ascent, every moment a precious invitation to awaken more fully to the miracle of existence. And as I moved through these shifting landscapes, I realized that this journey was both deeply intimate and profoundly universal. A shared odyssey of souls weaving their stories into the vast tapestry of being, where each thread contributes to the richness and complexity of the whole. And though the path may wind endlessly through unknown terrain, each step is imbued with meaning and purpose, an unfolding revelation that calls us to live with courage, compassion, and unwavering presence. And in this endless spiral of becoming, I found a new way of seeing myself and the world, not as separate or fragmented, but as integral, parts of a luminous whole, radiant with possibility and alive with the sacred pulse of creation itself, inviting all who dare to follow its winding course to awaken beyond the veil of illusion, to embrace the mystery and magic of the infinite now, and to become co-creators of a new reality born from the depths of love, truth, and boundless potential that stretches far beyond the horizons of imagination, ever inviting us to dive deeper, soar higher, and shine brighter as we dance eternally within the spiral of life. Emerging from the depths of the spiral's endless dance, I found myself drawn into an ever-expanding awareness where the lines between self and other, time and eternity, beginning and end became fluid and porous, revealing the intricate web of existence as a living, breathing organism in which every thought, emotion, and experience ripples outward, connecting all beings in an infinite dance of energy and consciousness that pulses with creative force beyond comprehension. And within this unfolding revelation, I realized that the spiral was not merely a pattern, but a profound metaphor for transformation itself, a symbol of the cyclical nature of life, where each revolution brings new insights, new challenges, and new opportunities to transcend old limitations and step into higher states of being. And as I moved deeper into this realization, the spiral's luminescent threads began to weave around me like a cocoon, inviting me to surrender fully to the process of metamorphosis, to release attachments to identity, control, and certainty, and to embrace the unknown with an open heart and fearless spirit. For it is within this space of surrender that true rebirth occurs, where the soul sheds its old skin and emerges renewed, radiant, and aligned with the cosmic flow of purpose and possibility. And as the cocoon dissolved, I was reborn into a realm of shimmering light and boundless potential, a dimension where time unfolded as a spiral itself, moving, not linearly, but in concentric circles of remembrance and awakening, where past, present, and future coexisted in a dynamic dance of creation and evolution. And here I encounter guides, ancient beings of wisdom and compassion, who imparted teachings about the unity of all things, the power of intention, and the sacred responsibility of co-creating reality with consciousness. Their voices resonating like a chorus of stars illuminating the path ahead, urging me to carry the message of interconnectedness back to the world below, to become a beacon of light and love in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. And as I descended from this luminous realm, the spiral continued to pulse within me, a constant reminder that the journey of awakening is never truly complete, but an eternal unfolding of deeper understanding, compassion, and creativity. And in this ongoing dance, I saw how every challenge, every moment of doubt or fear is simply an invitation to deepen trust, to cultivate resilience, and to remember the sacred spark that resides within every heart, waiting to be ignited into a blazing fire of transformation and healing. And as I walk this path, I realize that the spiral's gift is the awakening of the soul's infinite potential, a call to live fully, love deeply, and create boldly, knowing that we are all threads in the grand tapestry of existence, woven together by the timeless, radiant dance of life itself. And with this truth embraced, I step forward into the ever-unfolding spiral, ready to explore new realms of consciousness, to connect more deeply with the essence of being, and to share the light of awakening with all who are willing to listen and remember that within the spiral lies the key to the eternal dance of becoming, where we are all invited to join, to transform, and to shine endlessly as expressions of the boundless mystery and magic of the universe. Continuing from where we left off, as I journeyed ever deeper into the spiral's infinite embrace, it became clear that this sacred symbol was not merely a pattern, but a profound teacher revealing the very essence of existence itself. Each revolution within the spiral mirrored the cycles of life, death, and rebirth that shape all living beings, reminding me that transformation is constant, and that to resist change is to resist the natural flow of the universe. The spiral invited me to surrender to this flow, to release the illusions of control and permanence that so often bind the mind and heart, and in doing so, to open myself to the mysterious currents of creation that move through all things. I began to see that the spiral is present in the growth of plants, the formation of galaxies, the movement of oceans, and the rhythm of our own breath, a universal dance that connects the smallest atom to the vast cosmos. This realization sparked within me a deep sense of reverence and humility, a recognition that I am part of a greater whole that is both ancient and eternally new, a living thread woven into the tapestry of existence. As I embraced this interconnectedness, I noticed how the spiral also embodies the path of inner awakening, a winding, sometimes challenging journey that requires patience, courage, and trust. Each turn demanded that I confront my shadows, the fears and limiting beliefs hidden beneath layers of conditioning. Yet with each confrontation came healing and the lightness of liberation. It became clear that this inner work is not a solitary endeavor, but a shared journey, as the healing of one reverberates outward, touching others and gradually uplifting the collective consciousness. The spiral's rhythm became a meditation, a guide to moving with grace through the chaos and beauty of life, teaching me that growth is not linear, but cyclical, full of spirals within spirals, each layer revealing new depths and perspectives. Beyond personal transformation, the spiral also revealed itself as a blueprint for harmonious living in community and with nature. It spoke of balance between giving and receiving, action and rest, individuality and unity, urging a way of being that honors diversity while fostering connection. This wisdom inspired me to cultivate relationships rooted in empathy and authenticity, to engage with the world not as a separate observer, but as an active participant in the web of life. Moreover, I began to perceive how the spiral guides creative expression, a dynamic interplay of inspiration and manifestation where ideas emerge, evolve, and take shape like the unfurling of a fern or the shell of a lotus. This creative flow is a sacred dialogue between the inner world and outer reality, inviting endless exploration and renewal. As my understanding deepened, I realized the spiral also points toward a cosmic consciousness, an awareness that transcends the personal and touches the universal, reminding us that all life pulses with the same fundamental energy and intelligence. This awareness nurtures compassion and a profound sense of belonging that dissolves the illusion of separation and isolation. Embracing this, I felt called to share the spiral's teachings more widely, to help others recognize the patterns of growth and transformation within themselves and the world, fostering a collective awakening that could heal divisions and inspire a new paradigm of coexistence rooted in respect, love, and sustainability. In this calling, the spiral became a beacon of hope and possibility, a symbol of the eternal dance of life that invites us to awaken fully, love deeply, and live consciously in harmony with the vast, mysterious cosmos that cradles us all. And so, with a heart open and eyes awakened, I continue on this path, honoring each twist and turn of the spiral, knowing that every step brings me closer to the truth of who I am and the boundless potential of all that is done. As I continued to follow the spiral's guiding path beyond the personal and communal realms, I found myself drawn into an even greater exploration of the mysteries that lie at the intersection of science, spirituality, and philosophy, where the spiral reveals itself as a universal code woven into the very fabric of reality. It became clear that this symbol, ancient and yet eternally new, is reflected in the fractal geometry that underpins natural forms from the microscopic to the cosmic scale, suggesting that the universe itself is a living, breathing entity, dynamically unfolding in patterns of self-similarity and infinite complexity. This recognition led me to contemplate how the spiral encapsulates the principle of sacred geometry, a language of creation that speaks beyond words and connects all disciplines: mathematics, art, biology, and metaphysics in a harmonious synthesis. I realized that understanding the spiral is not just an intellectual exercise, but a way of tuning into the subtle energies that animate life and consciousness, allowing us to perceive reality with a heightened awareness and sensitivity. This awareness invites us to reconsider our relationship with technology and progress, urging a mindful integration where innovation honors the balance and cycles inherent in nature rather than disrupting them. I began to see that by embracing the spiral's wisdom, we can cultivate a future where human creativity and ecological stewardship coexist, fostering regenerative practices that heal rather than exploit the earth. Beyond the physical and ecological implications, the spiral also led me deeper into the realms of consciousness expansion and spiritual awakening, where it acts as a metaphor for the journey inward toward the center of our being and outward toward the infinite beyond. It revealed how the spiral serves as a map for transcending duality and embracing the paradoxes of existence, guiding seekers to dissolve ego boundaries and experience unity with all that is. This process is reflected in many ancient spiritual traditions and modern contemplative practices that emphasize cycles of inner death and rebirth, echoing the spiral's endless motion. As I explored these teachings, I encountered stories and symbols from diverse cultures: the Celtic triskele, the Fibonacci sequence in the growth patterns of plants, the spiral galaxies scattered across the universe, each reflecting the universal truth encoded in this shape. These connections deepen my appreciation for the shared human longing to understand our place in the cosmos and to align with the greater rhythms of life. Furthermore, the spiral's influence extends into the arts and human creativity, where it inspires countless works ranging from architecture to music, capturing movement, growth, and transformation in tangible form. This creative expression becomes a form of meditation and prayer, a way to embody the spiral's eternal dance and communicate its wisdom beyond language. In this light, every act of creation, whether painting, writing, or building, becomes a sacred gesture, a participation in the unfolding of universal life. Ultimately, the spiral invites us to live with intentionality and reverence, recognizing that we are co-creators in a vast cosmic play where each thought, action, and intention ripples outward in spiraling waves of influence. It teaches patience and resilience, reminding us that progress is often cyclical rather than linear, encouraging us to embrace setbacks as opportunities for deeper growth and transformation. This perspective nurtures hope and perseverance, essential qualities as we navigate the complex challenges facing humanity today. With these insights, I understood that the spiral is more than a symbol. It is a living philosophy and a dynamic guide for holistic living, one that integrates body, mind, spirit, and community in harmony with the rhythms of the earth and the cosmos. Carrying this wisdom forward, I feel called to embody the spiral's essence in every aspect of life, fostering a world where connection, creativity, and consciousness thrive in a balanced dance, echoing the eternal flow of the spiral that continues to inspire and transform all who open their hearts to its timeless message. Building on the profound realization from the spiral's universal symbolism, I found myself increasingly compelled to explore how this archetypal form influences not only individual transformation, but also collective human evolution, especially in the context of rapidly shifting social paradigms and the growing awareness of interconnectedness in the digital age. It became apparent that the spiral metaphor offers a framework for understanding the emergence of new cultural narratives that emphasize collaboration over competition, healing over division, and holistic well-being over fragmented specialization, thus serving as a blueprint for evolving societal structures that honor diversity while seeking unity, encouraging me to delve deeper into how ancient wisdom traditions and modern scientific discoveries are converging to illuminate the path toward what some call the global awakening, a pivotal shift marked by heightened consciousness, ecological responsibility, and the rise of innovative technologies designed to harmonize with natural systems rather than exploit them, inspiring communities around the world to experiment with new models of governance, education, an economy rooted in principles of circularity and resilience. all resonating with the spiral's intrinsic message of cyclical renewal and continuous growth. I also began to investigate the spiral's presence in the human brain and nervous system, where its fractal patterns echo the neural pathways that facilitate learning, memory, and creative insight, revealing that our very cognition is attuned to these fundamental rhythms, which suggests that by consciously engaging with spiral-based practices, such as spiral meditation, breath work, and movement arts like dance and yoga, we can rewire our mental and emotional patterns toward greater coherence and balance, thus fostering not only personal well-being, but also social empathy and collective healing, opening the door to a new era of conscious evolution that transcends traditional boundaries between science, spirituality, and art. Furthermore, the spiral's archetype extends deeply into the realms of mythology and storytelling, where it symbolizes the hero's journey as a continuous unfolding of challenges, growth, and transformation that never truly ends, but rather cycles through ever higher levels of awareness and mastery, reminding us that life itself is a spiral dance of learning and becoming, inviting us to embrace uncertainty and change as essential catalysts for awakening. This narrative structure is reflected in modern psychology's understanding of growth through nonlinear progress and the necessity of integrating shadow aspects of the self for true healing, highlighting how the spiral teaches resilience through acceptance of paradox and flow. In parallel, I became fascinated by how the spiral pattern is mirrored in the natural world's ecosystems, from the spiraling arms of hurricanes to the growth rings of trees, and the swirling patterns of ocean currents, each demonstrating the dynamic balance between order and chaos that sustains life on Earth, underscoring the urgent need for humanity to align with these natural cycles in our environmental practices to ensure long-term sustainability. Finally, embracing the spiral's wisdom has inspired me to envision a future where technology and nature co-evolve symbiotically, where innovation is guided by principles of biomimicry and circular design, creating regenerative systems that restore rather than deplete, thus embodying the spiral's eternal dance of birth, growth, decay, and renewal in practical ways that serve all beings and the planet itself, compelling me to commit my efforts to spreading this vision through education, creative expression, and community-building initiatives that invite others to awaken to the spiral's transformative power and join in weaving a collective tapestry of hope, healing, and harmony for generations to come. Continuing from the expansive vision laid out previously, the spiral's symbolism ultimately guides us toward embracing the interconnectedness of all life and recognizing that every action, thought, and intention reverberates through the intricate web of existence, inspiring a profound shift in consciousness where individual awakening becomes inseparable from collective transformation and planetary healing. As this awareness deepens, it challenges us to dismantle outdated paradigms rooted in separation, control, and exploitation, replacing them with a worldview that honors the sacredness of diversity and the dynamic flow of change, encouraging us to live with greater mindfulness, compassion, and purpose, which in turn fuels movements that advocate for social justice, environmental stewardship, and spiritual renewal across cultures and generations, creating fertile ground for new forms of leadership and collaboration that transcend hierarchical structures and instead foster networks of mutual support and shared responsibility. Furthermore, this evolution calls for integrating the wisdom of indigenous traditions, which have long embodied the spiral's principles through ceremonies, storytelling, and sustainable practices that celebrate reciprocity and reverence for the earth, inviting us to learn from their deep ecological knowledge and to co-create futures that balance technological advancement with ancestral reverence. On a personal level, embracing the spiral's journey invites us to continuously cultivate self-awareness and inner harmony through practices that honor the body, mind, and spirit, such as contemplative arts, holistic healing modalities, and creative expression, recognizing that healing the self ripples outward to heal families, communities, and ultimately, the global collective. illustrating the spiral's eternal message that transformation is an ongoing, expansive process without end or final destination. In the realm of science and innovation, this perspective fuels the exploration of cutting-edge fields like quantum physics, systems biology, and complexity theory, which reveal the universe's fractal nature and the fundamental interconnectedness of all phenomena, providing empirical foundations that complement spiritual insights and inspire interdisciplinary approaches to solving humanity's greatest challenges, including climate change, health crises, and social inequality. As we integrate these insights, a new paradigm emerges, one that celebrates paradox and uncertainty as fertile ground for creativity and emergence rather than fear and control, allowing us to navigate the complexities of the modern world with resilience and grace, much like the spiral itself, which embodies both stability and fluidity, structure and freedom, contraction and expansion. Ultimately, the spiral's timeless wisdom invites us to become conscious participants in the cosmic dance of creation, to co-create lives and societies that reflect the harmonious cycles of nature, fostering a legacy of hope, balance, and flourishing that honors the past, embraces the present, and inspires future generations to continue the journey of awakening and transformation without end.